This is Cynthia Lummis, chairman of the Senate Western Caucus, and today I'm fortunate to have on the Happy Trails broadcast Senator Kevin Cramer from the great state of North Dakota. So welcome and thanks for your service in the Senate Western Caucus.
Oh gosh, I love the Western Caucus. I mean, it's what we're all about. It's why you and I are here.
Yes,
is the West. And it's not. It's funny because being from North Dakota, a state that's similar in population to Wyoming, but we had our mountains removed, and so it's still wide open, but it's not quite as mountainous, but it's very similar culturally.
But what you have underground is a tremendous asset. The Bakken is turned into a tremendous benefit for the whole United States, but particularly for North Dakota.
It has, and it's certainly changed our state. We've had oil for a long time, but the Bakken, the ability to crack that code, the horizontal drilling and the fracking together, as you know, the code cracked by the great Harold Hamm and Continental Resources, just unleashed a whole bunch more resources. And it was a game changer for North Dakota. But what I love about it, as much as anything, Cynthia, and it really gets to the West and the common sense of the West and the things the values of the Western Caucus that you and I and our colleagues promote, is it demonstrates that a little bitty state with some good resources and some common sense can sort of show the world how to do it right. And that's what I love, is that we bring the example, because when you're growing food for a hungry world and producing energy for a growing economy, you matter. So little states like Wyoming and North Dakota, get to stand a little taller, and it gives us a little street cred.
Yeah, well, you and North Dakota have made your mark. Here you've got the Secretary of the Interior. Your delegation is really a hotshot delegation in terms of intellectual prowess as well as policy chops. So it's so fun to get to serve with you. Now, tell me a little bit about you, because it always helps inform our listeners about where you're coming from.
Sure. So I'm from a little town in North Dakota called Kindred. Kindred, when I was growing up, was about 500 people.
And is the mascot the Spirits?
No, but it's funny you say it. A lot of people presume that. We're the Kindred of Vikings. Oh. We very Norwegian little community, very Norwegian, and we fit right in. We didn't, my parents didn't grow up there, but my mother is 100% Norwegian, and so we fit right in. They still spoke Norwegian at the post office in the morning. I remember that growing up.
Great.
We let Catholics have a church on the edge of town. That kind of. But anyway, it's a very diverse city now because it's so close to Fargo and all that. But I grew up. But probably the thing that informed much of what I do, my work here, is that my dad was a rural electric lineman. And so even as a little boy, when I was like 3 and 4 or 5 years old, when we were living in Rolla, North Dakota, and he worked for Baker Electric, an outpost for Baker Electric, when there'd be a trouble call, when the weather would be tough and the lights would go out somewhere, as long as it was a fairly simple fix, he'd put me in the truck and we'd go on the trouble call together. Things you can't do anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of a Norman Rockwell scene.
It really is. And so I go back to that a lot when I think about things like linear infrastructure. I worked for the co-op in Kindred 3 summers during high school. Doing the things that putting meter boxes together and painting the numbers on the transformers, delivering the inventory out to a construction site, and I just got to know sort of from the ground at the ground level, and it still really informs me in a lot of ways.
Well, and then you became a member of the Public Service Commission in North Dakota, so you knew that business from the most intimate box that you mount on a pole.
So it's kind of I did, and what's funny about that, Cynthia, is that before that, I was tourism director, still the most fun you can have at work, by the way. And I'll never forget, because Wyoming had the most wonderful travel director who fought like hell for North Dakota to be part of the Old West Trail and part of the Rocky Mountain International Marketing Group. Was
that Frank Norris?
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, maybe it was later than Frank. We've had great tourism directors.
Well, first of all, can we just admit you have the prettiest
We have a lot to work with.
I mean, come on.
Yes.
It's so phenomenal. Anyway, paradise. But anyway, but in Ed Schaefer's cabinet,
I remember
my next 4 years was the second term was as an economic development and finance director. And I remember saying to Ed when he told me he was going to move me from tourism to ED&F, and I was, I was a promoter, but I said to him, I said, Ed, what I know about finance, fellow banking member, what I know about finance, you could tap into a small thimble. And he said, that's okay. We've had a banker for 4 years. We need a promoter. And that's really was sort of my entrance into more of the business side of things, of marketing and investment. But it's still, but that's what really prepared me as much as anything to be a regulator. Mm-hmm. Because on the Public Utilities Commission, or Public Service Commission, we call it in North Dakota, we had the traditional jurisdictions of rate making for gas utilities and electric utilities, but we also have tremendous authority over the siting of interstate transmission lines, interstate pipelines, intrastate gas lines, energy conversion facilities, everything from wind farms to a new refinery. And we had hundreds of cases during the Bakken boom when I was on that commission. And I'll never forget. So this gets back to where I have more common sense than intellect, just in case you're, fooled.
I would take common sense over intellect any day of the week.
Well, you and I deal a lot now with these regional transmission organizations and the keeping the grid viable and resilient and all this talk, which is all important stuff. But it's also complicated stuff. And I remember after about 2 weeks on the commission, I'd had many meetings as they were setting up MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operators. Oh, yeah. That was our market, right? That the FERC required us to set up. Anyway, and I just kept thinking, but I wasn't elected by a region. I was elected by a state, and and I didn't like it much, and I was confused by it, and it seemed manipulating to me. And I remember going into the chairman of the commission at the time was a very good friend of mine, Tony Clark, who eventually became a FERC commissioner. He was the Republican nominee of Barack Obama's, and so I went into him. I said, I've made a terrible mistake. He said, what's wrong? And he's much younger than me, by the way. And I said, he said, what's wrong? I said, I go to these RTO meetings, these MISO meetings. I don't even know what you people are talking about. I said, I feel like I'm drowning. And he laughed. And he said, do you believe in baptism by immersion? And I said, well, actually I do, but you don't because you're Episcopalian. But and he said, and he laughed. And he said, you'll get it. And I said, I'm not taking any chances. So I got an engineer and an economist from one of the utilities. I said, come in an hour before the next meeting with a white sheet of paper and a pen and explain locational market marginal pricing to me. I wanted to understand how the physics of the grid work with a regional market. And anyway, so I tell you that story because in terms of what informs you, that really helped me understand electricity better. Yeah. I understood it at the meter, but I didn't understand it in how you move it across state lines, multiple jurisdictions, who pays for what. All of those things I became, came to know pretty well. And what's interesting is our congresswoman now that has the seat that I used to have in the House when I was with you, she replaced me on the Public Service Commission.
Yeah, I'm impressed with her.
She's very smart. Now she has common sense and intellect, so she's got me doubled up.
Oh, you'll never convince me that anybody has you doubled up. Okay, so you served on the Public Service Commission, and clearly in multiple administrative positions in state government, and succeeded wildly at everything you did, obviously. Then, was that when you came to the U.S. House?
Yeah. So I did. I was in my second term on the Public Service Commission when I won and became a House member in 2013. Joined you, at that point, you were already well established as the head of the West, and you were just such a great mentor to me, Cynthia. I know I say this often, but not often enough. You were such a great mentor to me, not just because culturally and experientially and stuff, just where we come from, we connected, but I just appreciated and still do your application of really good, solid, strong, unapologetic, conservative values with the common sense and the ability and the pragmatism to actually move the ball, and I've always appreciated that.
Well, that's a high compliment coming from you.
It's totally true.
So you went to the Senate when?
I can never remember. It was 2018. So I had. So
you're in your second term.
I'm in my second term. Okay. So I served 6 years. It was interesting. I'm the first Republican in my life to have this position.
Wow.
I know people think of North Dakota as this very bright red state, but we're very populist.
Yeah.
Much like Wyoming. I mean,
Yeah.
people are, they just, less is better, right? And so, but I served those 6 years. When I won the seat to the House in 2012, the Senate seat was opened up, which opened up the House seat because the House member ran for the Senate, and Heidi Heitkamp won the seat. And so her and I were elected to Congress on the same day by the very same people, just like Wyoming is in that large seat.
Yes.
So I run 2 more times while she's sitting in the 6-year term of the senator, right? And then I ran against her 6 years later in 2018 with Donald Trump's help and, frankly, his strong encouragement. I said no to him several times before. I said fine.
Well, he exercised really good judgment when he got behind you.
Yeah, well.
So here we are. You and I are now together on the EPW committee, Environment and Public Works, and we're looking at a couple issues that you're an expert in and that we could marry under an idea that you have. So those 2 ideas are reauthorizing surface transportation and permitting reform. So how do you envision matching them up in a way that could be really effective?
Well, so good question, because, see, I think transportation infrastructure is probably the lowest hanging fruit there is in the whole world of infrastructure.
Oh, everybody has surface transportation needs.
Exactly. Nobody. You might not like pipelines, or you might not like wind farms. You might, but everybody likes a good highway.
Yep.
And we know how important it is, particularly out in the West, where distance is one of our challenges.
Yeah, total lifeline for interstate commerce.
Right. Yeah. Whether you're selling a cow or a load of wheat or whatever, you need to get it to market. So we get that. But one of the biggest challenges of permitting and infrastructure is the permitting. But what I didn't even know till recently is there are different kinds of there are different ways, different avenues that you deal with linear infrastructure and all kinds of intrusions, if you will, on nature, depending on the use of the land and depending on the ownership of the land.
Yeah.
Well, one thing about, and I've always loved this about highway transportation and about surface infrastructure, it is under the specific jurisdiction of the federal government because it's interstate commerce. It's the facilitation of interstate commerce. And so we have an obligation as well as an opportunity to do something useful. And that's why I think it's so immensely popular. Plus, like you said, everybody needs it. But if you can take 1,000 miles of interstate, site it, permit it, and build it, you should be able to do the same for a pipeline, an electric transmission line, fiber. You should know, how to facilitate easements, routes and all of those things and zoning. So I think the 2 naturally go together. But I think permitting reform can ride on the popularity of surface transportation bill. Now, neither one of them is easy on their own. So marrying the 2, as you put it, is not going to. I don't want to oversimplify the challenge.
The reason I'm attracted to your idea here is people assume when you mean permitting reform, you mean cutting corners. And when you and I think of permitting reform, we think of expediting efficiently. You don't cut corners, you just work faster.
Yes. So you work faster, and I think you can do some of that by working closer together. So just take as an example, there are multiple agencies, federal agencies, that intersect with infrastructure development of all types, but certainly along linear, right? Yeah. And in your part of the world, it's even more pronounced than here, than in North Dakota. But I always say you can do certain things consecutively, or you can do it concurrently. And both ways, you can have multiple jurisdictions touch things.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it consecutively, each jurisdiction takes its month or 2 or 60 days or 6 months, and then it's another 6 months. But if you do it, I've always believed that if you do things concurrently, you have the benefit both of efficiency of time and the dynamism of interaction. Mm-hmm. And why wouldn't BLM and the Corps of Engineers why wouldn't they be in the same room as they're determining how to best protect the environment under their personal jurisdiction?
Yes.
Not to mention a whole Fish and Wildlife, you know it all, EPW. I mean, there's so many APA. There's so much. So I thought the other day, quite honestly, as we record this, in our hearing on it, I was encouraged by some of the words that Sheldon Whitehouse shared about, starting earlier with the interagency process. Mm-hmm. Common sense. And I just think we're in one of those moments, Cynthia. And by the way, it doesn't just happen. I mean, we're prepared for the moment as well, right? But I think we're in that moment and prepared for it, having debated it for a number of years now, where everybody's a winner.
Yeah. Hey, I thought that hearing was absolutely fascinating because you and I lived through the Biden years here in the Senate that limited oil and gas lease sales on federal land. Illegally, that's right. Yeah. That put a hold on coal leasing until they'd done a comprehensive environmental impact statement covering the full extent of global warming. I mean, it just got wild. Mm-hmm. Anything hydrocarbon just got its knees cut off.
That's right.
Now, the opposite is true. So with President Trump in office, there are some wind energy projects offshore from Maryland that they actually, the blue state Marylanders, actually support, and that President Trump does not. And so they're getting a taste of their own medicine in reverse. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of flabbergasted that we finally found, okay, they don't like hydrocarbons. We don't like non-base load energy as much.
Yes.
But we all like certainty.
That's right.
Once a project has begun, like the Keystone XL pipeline.
Good example.
You don't just chop it off at the knees.
Yeah, it doesn't attract much investment with all that uncertainty. I remember in the first Trump term, when I was a freshman House member, actually it was the start of my second term, and I was asked to do some speaking surrogate work for the campaign, because I was an early endorser, on energy policy. And it turned out that I ended up debating Trevor Hauser from Wyoming, who was Hillary Clinton's climate czar, or whatever you call it. A nice young guy.
You remembered his name.
I did remember his name. I sometimes Trevor Hauser, and it was a joyful experience for me. But I remember debating one time down in California at an American Gas Association event, and then I debated him at the Richmond Law School. And in front of a bunch of law students and nationally broadcast on streamed and whatnot, mainly among the trades. So it became kind of a wonky thing.
Yeah.
And I remember sort of throwing that in his face a little bit, Hillary Clinton's statement when she's running for president, that I believe that gas is a good bridge fuel, but we have to make sure it's a very short bridge. And I thought, well, gee, that makes me just want to invest tomorrow. It's like, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
And now we're seeing gas as kind of the solution.
Oh,
right?
You look at artificial intelligence and the need to scale fast for AI. Natural gas is the way to go. It burns so clean. And it's readily available. They can locate near some of those hubs. It's impressive how quickly we can deploy it, and it's inexpensive.
It is inexpensive and high. Yeah, and it's high supply as well as high demand, and it's highly dispatchable, which is really, really important. So you can fire a generator up quickly, and you can have full power quickly. And anyway, we could get into a lot of wonky stuff there, but. And anyway, I just think that moment that you just described is where, one of Cramer's convictions is, I reject the notion that every transaction requires a loser. And I just think we're in one of those moments when everybody can win and claim victory.
Have you bounced your idea past Sheldon Whitehouse?
You know what I said to him the other day? I might have said this. I said to him the other day, I said, Sheldon, after the hearing, I said, Sheldon, I think that from now on, when we have hearings and meetings on this topic, we should just stipulate to the facts, because we get it. You don't like Donald Trump. We didn't like Joe Biden. You don't like fossils. We don't like wind. Let's just acknowledge that, and then let's talk about the solution part of it.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I think it'd be. I just think we're going to waste too much time if we don't just get to the fact that, hey, we all want this.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out.
Well, and what makes me so happy about this, you're knowledgeable, you understand it, you're common sense, you can work across the aisle, and you're the next in line to chair.
Yeah, I guess so.
That committee after Shelley Moore Capito's terms expire. So you provide opportunity for hope, Senator Cramer, that some of these intractable issues can be resolved because you're willing to, put some elbow grease into it and some common sense. And we're just so grateful that you're part of the Western Caucus, part of the U.S. Senate, and just a total breath of fresh air.
Well, I love being a part of it, and I love the United States Senate, and you and I are probably as good of examples as anybody as to why it's important that the founders had this brilliant idea so long ago that these small populated states in the West someday may need to protect some resources that the rest of the country doesn't even know they need. So we better make sure they have equal power in one of the chambers. I mean, it's just mind-numbing to me how brilliant those guys were, and boy, I'm grateful every day.
I am too. And thank goodness it gives us a chance to have an outsized voice.
Yeah.
We're able to punch above our weight.
That's right.
And I'm grateful you're punching way above your weight.
What's
Kevin.
really special about it, Cynthia, is that our constituents get to punch way above their weight.
Yeah, good point.
Because they have access to you and me.
Yeah, and they're
We get to
so
talk to them.
knowledgeable.
So knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So knowledgeable. I mean, I had two farmers in my conference room today with some interior folks talking about wildlife production areas, and all these lawyers going through all the reasons certain things can't be done, and then these two farmers that just lay it out so basic and so simple, and they're feeding a hungry world, and it's their land, and they care as probably they certainly can take care of the ducks a lot better than any bureaucrat.
There's no doubt about it.
No question, right?
Yeah.
But Wyoming is the example number one. They absolutely know how to care for and have a desire and a heart to do it. So anyway, it's a joy to work with you, and it's fun to be part of. This is a very cool thing.
Isn't
you got
it
going.
fun?
This is very cool.
Well,
Yeah.
let's do it again
Okay.
sometime.
I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Okay, for the Senate Western Caucus, this is Cynthia Lummis and Senator Kevin Cramer from the great state of North Dakota. Thanks for listening.